Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie, and welcome to episode 2 of a two-part series on singer-songwriter Jackie Levein. Now, episode 1, which I've already posted, which was CD Junkie episode number 215, that focused on his band Doll by Doll. Now I'm going to talk about his solo career. There's a lot to go through here. I do not have any live albums. These are just all studio. I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of live albums, but since Jackie's passing, I've regretted not buying any of his live albums. And then I found out later on that there are maybe some studio tracks spread across some of those releases. So eventually I'll have to track all those down as well. But here are his studio albums. Let's start from the very beginning. Even before Doll by Doll, he released a solo album called Control, but he released it under the name John St. Field. Now that album was eventually released on CD under the name Jackie Levein, but this album came out in 1971, and it's very folky prog, a little bit of psych in there, very unique, very different, but you can really tell that he had already found his sound and his style. Now, of course, then he went on to Doll by Doll. After Doll by Doll split up, he put out a solo single in 1983 called Love is Shining Down on Me. Very pop, very catchy. That was followed the next year by a single called Uptown. Now, those tracks and some earlier tracks can be found on this semi-official CD called Robberies of the Rain, and that is a wonderful collection of Jackie Levein rarities. Fantastic if you can track that down. Love is Shining Down on Me is one of his most perfect pop songs. Now, he had issues with drug addiction, and he managed to pull himself out of that, and he helped a lot of other musicians and regular people overcome their drug addictions. But somewhere in between there, in 1988, he got back together with Joe and David from Doll by Doll and Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, and they formed a band called Concrete Bulletproof Invisible. And they put out a single that's never come out on CD, unfortunately, but if you happen to track it down, it's really, really wonderful. Now, he didn't return to a full-fledged solo career. You know, he'd overcome his drug addiction. He was no longer this intense, brooding, unhappy person that was fronting Doll by Doll, filled with anger. There was so much more beauty in the music he created, so much more beauty coming out of his heart and coming out of his music and out of his mind. He became a wonderful, brilliant singer, songwriter, a lot of folk leanings, but he wrote a lot of great tunes. I'm going to start going through these very, very quickly here. The first thing he released was songs from the Argyle Cycle. It was an EP, came out in 1994. And this was supposed to be songs that were from his upcoming album called The Argyle Cycle. Well, the album didn't come out as The Argyle Cycle, but some of those songs did make it on this album, which is called The Mystery of Love is Greater Than the Mystery of Death. That came out later that year, and it has some of those songs. Really wonderful album. That was joined by a mini album called The Right to Remain Silent, the Mystery Supplement, which had additional songs recorded from that same period. And of course, I've had both of those for years, but thankfully, just in the last couple of years, they reissued that album. And as a bonus disc, they included that Right to Remain Silent mini album. So you get all the tracks on this 2 CD set. It's wonderful, beautiful. It's warm. His songwriting was far more rooted in reality. You really felt that he was experiencing all these things through his songs, that he was sitting in a bar and just singing about everybody's life, of all the people that surrounded him, and talking about the heartache, talking about the joy, talking about the pain. You felt it. You felt this in Jackie's music. It was absolutely wonderful. His next album was called Forbidden Songs of the Dying West. That came out in 1995. This has a song called Men in Prison, which has this male choir providing backing vocals that are stunningly beautiful and emotional and warm and even tender. That's the thing about Jackie Levein. He was not afraid to be tender. He was not afraid to admit he was wrong. He was not afraid to be joyful or to talk about things that were going on around him. Absolutely wonderful. Forbidden Songs of the Dying West came out in 1995. The long-promised album called The Argyle Cycle, it came out in 1996 as The Argyle Cycle, Volume 1. Another great collection of songs. 1997 gave us Fairy Tales for Hard Men. And again, Each of these albums, they have pop, they have rock, they have folk, but each album also has this ethereal atmosphere to them that just makes them just beautiful albums. I'm not a big folk guy. I'm a pop kid. I look for these great little hooks and melodies. Jackie Leven had them in spades. Just such an incredible, emotional songwriter, connected with the listener right away. His next album was called Night Lilies, and that came out in 1998. That was followed by Defending Ancient Springs. That came out in the year 2000. Creatures of Light and Darkness was his next album, and that came out in 2001. Shining Brother, Shining Sister was his next album. That came out in 2003. And he was putting out so much music that I think his contract, for Cooking Vinyl was like one album per year. But he had so much music that they would actually start releasing albums under pseudonyms, including, I believe it's Sir Vincent Lone, or could be Sir Vincent Loney. This album is called Songs for Lonely Americans, and it's got some wonderful songs on it. Then there's an author-poet named Ian Rankin, and both he and Jackie did a show where Ian Rankin wrote like a short story or a poem about Jackie, and then Jackie would perform songs in between some of the readings or whatever. And it came out as a 2 CD set called Jackie Leven Said, and that's Jackie Leven and Ian Rankin. Then in 2005, he put out an album called Elegy for Johnny Cash. In 2007, he put an album called Oh, What a Blow That Phantom Dealt Me. And with each album, by the way, when I'm going through, not every album sounds the same. The soundscape on each album, it just ebbs and flows. It's upbeat, and it's mellow, and it's emotional, and it's joyful. There's jigs in there, and there's rockers in there. And with every album, he was continually challenging himself. And although all the music sounds like Jackie Leven, none of these albums sound identical to each other. There's always something different, something new. On some of these albums, like the final song would be a song from one of his label mates. On some of them, you get like 9 Jackie Leven songs, and the 10th song is a song from another one of his musical friends that had an album out on the label. So he's giving away some of the real estate on his albums to his musical friends and people that he believes in. Very, very giving, kind human being, as well as an incredible, gifted artist. So that Sir Vincent guy came along again for an album called When the Bridegroom Comes, and this came out in 2007. Also that same year, he put out an album under the name Jackie Balfour, and that is Chip Pan Fire, and this is a poetry reading, so pretty much spoken word with some music in the background. So in 2008, out comes the album Lovers at the Gun Club, then another Sir Vincent album called Troubadour Heart. Now, this stuff is fantastic. Now, these might have been songs that were left over from other recording sessions or new songs. I'm not 100% sure about that, but they're beautiful. I mean, there's some of his songs are so touching and will just get you right in the heart. In 2010, out comes the album Gothic Road. And, I apologize that I'm not going more in depth on these, but it would just turn into a long video. And I have a medley that's going to come up that's going to introduce you to some of the music featured on these CDs. Now, in 2011, he released an album called Wayside Shrines and the Code of the Traveling Man. And Michael Cosgrave is the guy that performed keyboards with him a lot. And this was his final album. Jackie passed away in November 2011 after such an amazing career. I mean, you may think that there's a lot of music here, but it's really not enough when you deal with somebody with this much talent. But it's so heartwarming to know that there's all this music here for us to enjoy. The guy was a magician. He was a musician and a magician. He created magic just from his heart, from his fingertips, from his voice. His voice was so unique. And his sense of humor, yet his ability to connect with the listener, his audience was just incredible. Now, a decade after his death, there was a compilation that was released called The Wanderer, a tribute to Jackie Leven. This compilation features Tom Robinson, Ralph McTell, Jinder, Andy White, the Membranes, Deborah Greenwood, Boo Hewerdine, Eliza Carthy, and also another one of my musical heroes, Henry Priestman from Yachts and the Christians, and so many other fine releases. But now that you've heard me talk about Jackie Leven, like I said, I sort of feel like I'm not paying enough attention to Jackie, but I really want the music to do the talking. So what I did is I put together a medley here of some of my favorite Jackie songs. And this is just an introduction to his music. This is not in any kind of order. It spans this career that I just talked about, his solo career. And I hope that this manages to introduce you to this man's wonderful music. So give it a listen, and I'll see you on the other side.
I'll never love like this again. I couldn't lift the burden. Yeah. And like the young Irishman and Englishman, between them, snow is fading in the river gray. Black hawthorn catches me and rips my life away. I look out the ancient window. It's Christmas time in the street. I see women shopping. Some are broken, some are chic. Some have got the North Sea pain from standing in another man's rain. Standing in another man's rain. Standing in another man's rain. On a freezing night by the sea, I could hear the waves outside the window, and I was so yeah, I was so on that day. Supermarket trolley left behind by the tide, sinking in the blue-gray mud where the little fish hide. And the loneliness fall on me like a musty old cloak that you find backstage in a little room where the dreams are all broken. Sometimes you write the great songs through sheer force of will. Sometimes they flood into your heart like a night rain beating on a windowsill. Like a night rain beating on a windowsill. I was a single father, but I just can't complain. Got a heart full of headstones as I step down, as I step down from the train, from the train. It takes a long time to remember what your name is. Long time with lots of falling down. You spend a long time rising from the warm earth. Your name whispered in the ground, in the ground. One day in a lawless land, as I stood by the sea, I thought I saw you running back to me. Our Father, I labor alone. I work with rock and I work with stone. In the dark hours, into my heart, an air that kills. From yon far-off country blows. Whose are those blue remembered hills? What spires, what farms are those? When I was a boy in a cloud of linseed oil, there was cobbles and trams and old men covered in coal, and hard
club.
Shoot it up, baby, shoot, shoot.
Lovers at the gun club.
Shoot it up, baby, shoot, shoot.
Lovers at the gun club.
Shoot it up, baby, shoot, shoot.
Lovers at the gun club. They don't wanna die.
Lonely in a cafe, staring at an empty place. In the sorrow of the traffic, I felt my mind disintegrate.
Glory be upon you, as the river runs the bend.
Far away in a yellow gold land, sitting in a square by a little brass band. I don't know, but I've been told that Daddy's heart is paved with gold. Water comes splinters to his arms, feeling breathing deep and Muddy river flowing through the city to the sea. I see the dead men shuffling in their bones. Young girls laughing on their mobile.
I watched a friend of mine turning in his grave. The lock was jammed and the family scrammed, frozen in disbelief. He was standing in the street, lost like a man in a new young song. In a revenge of memory, he knew where it went wrong.
Little children all agree that men are gone, but they live there for evil.
I hope the young boys do not fail to fall in love with each other.
Believe that love is shining down. Believe that love is shining down.
Believe it.
Believe that love is shining down. Believe that love is shining down.
50 long years just to work out that because I was angry didn't mean I was right. Now I'm sitting in a bar alone with the jukebox playing a terrible song. The bartender says, I see it's you again. I've been drinking deep from a jar of pain. Jar of pain. I remember once.
Anyway, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed the second part of my two-part focus on Jackie Leven's music. If you haven't seen the Doll by Doll one, go back and watch that as well. I really appreciate you watching this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.